What's going on, everybody? Today we are going over 8 players that you need to trade for before it's too late in fantasy football. We're recording this video right after week 2 is over. These guys are great value trades at the moment, so let's not waste any more time. We'll get right into it right here. If you're new to this channel, by the way, hit that subscribe button, like the video at the end. Jamar Chase is number 1 on this list. Jamar Chase started off this year with 2 bust weeks for his standards. 9.1 and 8.1 in PPR leagues, respectively, on 17 targets combined in those games. Now, it's not the usage that's the problem currently with Jamar Chase. Number 1, Joe Burrow isn't 100% healthy, and you can see that. It's been pretty obvious over these first 2 weeks. Number 2 is that Chase is seeing a higher double team rate than normal. Now, obviously, I expect this to continue to some capacity over the upcoming weeks here. But if T. Higgins gets going on the opposite side of the field, teams aren't going to have much of a choice. They're going to have to pick their poison. Either you double team Jamar Chase and let T. Higgins burn you the entire game, or you play man coverage on each of them, or whatever the case is. Maybe you double Jamar here and there. Maybe you double T. Higgins here and there. Whatever the case may be, one of these guys is going to beat you on a week-to-week basis. And as long as the conditions are not sloppy like they were in week number 1, one of these guys should perform on a weekly basis. Now, you might say, okay, Joe Burrow just strained his calf, so why do I want anything to do with Jamar Chase? Even if Joe Burrow misses this upcoming week, I would still be targeting Chase. All right, he is still going to be that effective wide receiver that you want in fantasy football. You're betting on a top 3 wide receiver talent in the National Football League. All right, if you're going to go get him, it's got to be at one of his lowest points in the year. I think right now will be his lowest point in the year. If someone in your league is panicking very hard over Jamar Chase, it was their number 1 overall pick or whatever the case may be, first round pick, obviously. They're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with Jamar Chase right now. Okay, I'm 0-2 because I can't score any points. My number 1 pick is not producing. That's exactly what you want. You want to go out right now, and I would try to trade away somebody maybe like Keenan Allen, maybe Devontae Smith, maybe Mike Evans. I don't think Mike Evans is going to go for Jamar Chase, but I'm saying if you add another piece along with that, that could be a nice trade talk. All right, if you can catch someone panicking and really going, you know what, I don't know, Joe Burrow doesn't look 100% healthy. I don't really want anything to do with this situation from Jamar Chase because he's not performing. Take that trade, take that opportunity to get that top 3 elite wide receiver talent on your fantasy football team, and you'll thank yourself later on in this season. Number 2, we have Travis Etienne Jr. Now, week number 1, Etienne fantasy owners were feeling great about their pick, but week number 2 happened. All right, and people might be questioning if that 3rd round fantasy pick was worth it. All right, this is exactly what you want. Same situation as Jamar Chase. You want to get a nice value for him when people are panicking. I don't think there's anything really to worry about with Travis Etienne Jr. going forward. He played on 48 out of a possible 66 snaps against the Chiefs, which was 4 times the amount of snaps that Tank Bigsby played, who was 2nd in snaps played at the running back position. Chris Jones came back for the Chiefs in this game. It was an ugly performance from both teams on the offensive end. Nobody could get anything going. There will be better weeks ahead for Travis Etienne. I would try to get Etienne for somebody on your team that maybe has less of a stranglehold on the offensive snap count at the running back position in their current offense. Let's say somebody like Kenneth Walker or James Cook, perhaps, because he's not used a ton in the red zone. I would probably even go Rashad White for Travis Etienne Jr. I think any of those options, you send the trade offers out. I'm not saying these people are going to accept them, but send them out and see what they counter with. All right, if they're putting Etienne or Chase's value too low, take advantage right now while they're struggling. Another guy, A.J. Brown, had a tough game last Thursday night against the Minnesota Vikings. This game could have easily been much different, but if your fantasy league mates were not paying attention to this game, not watching the entire game all the way through, they might have missed this information. First off, a holding penalty by Rashad Penny prevented a long touchdown catch. And then second off, a non-called pass interference also prevented a long touchdown for A.J. Brown in this game. Now, you could see later on in this game against the Vikings, he was visibly upset because he wasn't receiving enough targets from Jalen Hurts. And then right after that, Jalen Hurts started targeting him more. I would obviously expect him to get more targets as the weeks go on. I think A.J. Brown is a ticking time bomb waiting to explode in fantasy football. And the fact that he hasn't yet in these first 2 weeks, he had a decent week 1 for A.J. Brown standards. Week 2 was a dud. Week 3 could be where he explodes against a Bucs defense. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I think this is one of his lowest value points of the entire season. you're going to go get him this week. Next up, we have Brian Robinson Jr. Currently, Brian Robinson's value is probably the highest on this list in terms of trade value, but I definitely think he's going to be worth it getting him now rather than later on in this season. Now, of course, the numbers have been stellar so far into the year compared to last, but the real thing that we're looking at, or at least I'm looking at, is the usage out of the backfield. Antonio Gibson basically hasn't seen any carries this season. Last year, the appeal with Gibson is that he got some carries, and then he would go out for almost all the passing routes. This year, Brian Robinson is running way more routes, so I don't even really know if Gibson is worth rostering at this point past the handcuff of Brian Robinson Jr. He is definitely the number one running back in this offense, and he could be a number one running back on your fantasy team by the middle of this season. I could easily see that happening. Next up, we have Jeudy. Coming off that injury, I would try to catch people who are being a little bit impatient with his return. I would try to catch them off guard. This was a guy before the season that was going in the 5th or 6th round of fantasy drafts. Before that hamstring injury occurred, people got scared. They said, whoa, we don't want anything to do with Jeudy. Courtland Sutton is a much better value in this offense. You guys got scammed if you picked up Courtland Sutton for that value. Like, he was going way too high in those best ball leagues and stuff like that. Jeudy exploded at the end of last season and had the best year of his short career, even though Russell Wilson had one of his worst years of his entire career. All right, Russ is looking a bit better so far into this season, and once Jeudy gets back and fully healthy, he's going to be easily the number one target for Wilson as the weeks go on. Now, Jeudy was on the field in week number 2 for 45 out of a total 66 offensive snaps. I would imagine that'll increase to about 90 to 95% of offensive snaps once Jeudy is fully healthy. Next up, we have Zay Flowers on the Baltimore Ravens. Listen, for fantasy owners that were expecting fireworks after that week 1 performance of 17.7, I think he had 10 targets in week number 1. They might have been a little let down due to the lack of targets that he got in week 2, but his usage was still elite. He played the most snaps out of any Ravens wide receivers and ran the most routes on the team, even more than Mark Andrews. Now, of course, this could be due to the fact that he was coming back from that injury from week 1 and the preseason. But if Zay Flowers is going to get this type of usage every single week, he has to be the number 2 option behind Mark Andrews. I think there's no doubt in my mind Mark Andrews is going to be Lamar's favorite target. But if Zay Flowers and Lamar's chemistry keeps growing throughout this season, he's going to trust him more and more. Zay Flowers is a great flex option or even wide receiver 2 on your fantasy team going forward. Another thing is that Odell got injured this week. I don't know how long he's going to be out, but that increases his usage percentage and target share even more going into the next couple of weeks here. Next up, we have Jamir Gibbs. Well, we were seeing his usage get bumped week after week the first 2 weeks, but now he has the starting role if David Montgomery doesn't play in week number 3. He had 8.0 PPR fantasy points in week 1, 12.6 PPR fantasy points in week 2. He should easily see over 15 fantasy points in week number 3 when he has the starting role. He could really be a league winner. All right, I'm saying that right now. Once he gets that full workload, this guy could really change things up for your fantasy football team. I wouldn't mind giving up someone that started off the year hot. Mike Evans, like I said earlier, even Keenan Allen, I wouldn't be totally opposed to it. Maybe the highest I would go is towards the Jalen Waddle range. I wouldn't go any higher than that for Jamir Gibbs, but I do think he could finish out the rest of the weeks in fantasy football as the number 1 running back. That's how much I believe in this guy's talent. I think this is the last possible chance you have to go get Jamir Gibbs right now. Next up, we have Anthony Richardson. He went out in the game against the Texans with a concussion, but up to that point, he was having an amazing fantasy day. 2 touchdowns on the ground, 6 for 10 through the air. He had 17.74 fantasy football points before the second quarter even ended. That would have been a massive day for Anthony Richardson. I could have easily seen him finishing as the number 1 QB in week 2 if he hadn't gotten injured. His main value clearly lies in his rushing upside. All right, that's no shocker. Although the team isn't great overall by any means, he can still finish near the top 5 just because of his rushing ability. All right, I would be trading for him right now before he really explodes later on in this season. He reminds me of Justin Fields last year, late in the season. Do you remember that amazing run that Justin Fields had for fantasy football owners. It made a lot of people their fantasy playoffs just having Justin Fields rostered on in their starting lineups. I think this could be easily the same case with Anthony Richardson. Now, some other names that I was going to put on this list before the Monday Night Football game happened. By the way, Nick Chubb is out for the year with that gruesome leg injury. That was absolutely terrible to see. All right, I believe in Nick Chubb. I thought he could have been the #1 running back in fantasy football this year. So that's a terrible injury. I would go out right now and get Jerome Ford on your team. Spend your waiver dollars on him. But Amari Cooper was going to be on this list. He redeemed himself in this Monday night game against the Steelers, had a pretty good performance coming off that injury. And then George Pickens. I think it's too late to go get either of these guys. Their value is going to be spiked way higher than in week 1. They were at a massive discount in week 1. But after week 2, fantasy owners are going to be asking a lot for these two players. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, drop a thumbs up. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, leave them down below. If you need to know any advice, I got you covered. I'll do my best to answer any questions you have. And also, if you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button. I will catch you in the next one. Good luck in week number 3. Peace out.